Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Transform Your Wellness podcast, the space where we explore all things wellness, energy, consciousness, and transformation. I'm your host, Karen Hagberg, the Awake Wellness Warrioress, and as always, this is a place for deep, heart led conversations designed to help you awaken, expand, and create a life of vitality, purpose, and soul alignment. Each week, we dive into many layers of what it truly means to be well, body, mind, and spirit, and how to live in harmony with your highest frequency. And today, we're taking that conversation to a whole new level. Because in this episode titled The New Energetic Frontier, CERN, Atlas, and Quantum Jumps, oh my, we're exploring the edges of both science and spirituality where the mysteries of the universe meet the awakening of humanity. Together with the incredible Danelle Boyles, we'll be talking about CERN, the Atlas Project, and black holes, and what's really happening in the quantum field right now. We'll explore how these discoveries and energetic shifts reflect our own inner evolution, how they mirror the awakening, expansion, and recalibration happening on a cellular and soul level across the planet. So settle in, open your heart and mind, and get ready for a journey that will expand your perception of what's possible, because the new energetic frontier isn't just out there in space. It's happening right here within each of us. So I'm so excited to have my beautiful friend Danelle Boyles from Indiana, Evansville, with me today again for the third time. Danelle, welcome.
Hi, hello, Karen. It's a pleasure as always. I always get a little giddy whenever I hear you say the intro because I know we're about to talk about some really deep stuff that's going to either resonate, be very taboo, or introduce some newly found planted seeds to individuals that are just coming in contact with some of the information that transpires in our conversations. So it's always a pleasure. Thank you for the warm introduction. I feel like most people who join us for our podcast kind of have an idea of who I am at this point. So, I don't, lengthy, in-depth introductions of myself aren't necessary. But, I'm very excited to touch ground with some of these conversations because we have already spoken about some of them. Some we have dove deeply into, some we've only grazed the surface, but I feel like every time we're called to have one of these conversations, it's all about timing because, collectively, individually, everyone is moving through processes that is, it seems genuinely like, excuse me, in tune to their own personal journey, but it's actually quite connected and related quantumly, like all across the board with individuals that are on different planes. And so here we go to the new energetic frontier.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we were going to talk about something that I've found really quite fascinating. I started reading a little bit about it a few years ago, and I'm talking about CERN and the Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I know there might be people who know about it and there might be people who don't know about it. So, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure, I will elaborate to the extent of what I can. And Karen, 5 years ago, I was one of those people that had no idea what CERN was. And the only way that I discovered what it was by my own experiences. When we originally started this whole transformational journey of moving the collective through an awakening, ascended, expanded experience of integrating new timelines. I began talking to higher consciousness, source, God, however you want to address it. And this is when you're a channeler and you channel higher conscious information. You just ask questions, you ask for answers, and you're just given the answer. It's collective consciousness that is grounded into the grid work of humanity. And so I started having experiences that I had never had before. I knew something major had happened. My higher consciousness, I was already aware of it. And I asked, what is causing these experiences to transpire? Why are we going through this process? Why am I going through this process? Why am I experiencing these things? And my downloaded answer was due to CERN, which, a lot of people nowadays know what CERN is. It's a particle accelerator, a hadron collider, a big experimental scientific field of trying to manipulate time studies, and trying to impact time. And the answer was CERN screwed up. Literally, the exact answer was downloaded to me. And I was like, what is CERN? So I immediately go and Google CERN and discover what it is. And so CERN is responsible for a very large portion of the experiences we're having today. Now, I open my Google account every day, with the interest of what articles are going to be present, in my little tally of interest, as you do research and stuff, you have different articles that ping. And just recently, when I would open my daily news articles and the latest scientific discoveries, foundings, and all that. And one of the most recent ones is CERN. And that CERN is actually stepping forward and admitting that they screwed up. They screwed up. They fractured time. They created these bleed throughs into other dimensional, which is also a whole nother conversation, because, whenever you talk about how CERN can catastrophically cause a timeline disruption, then, well, what is a timeline? What is interdimensional interfaces? What's interdimensional parallels? It becomes very complex. So, but yeah, CERN is basically just scientific studies of how to manipulate time-space. Of CERN's malfunctioning are time-space functionality and fluidity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was breaking up a little bit there, so hopefully the
Yeah, we're
will
going
be stable. But
we
we
have
are going.
major galactic energy coming in right now, and it interferes with my internet, my phone, my computer. It interferes terribly.
Yeah.
We're actually expected to have pretty significant blackouts over the next probably 72 hours.
Yeah.
Problems with cell service and internet and stuff like that.
Well, hopefully it will last for the next 45 minutes or so. But yeah, it's interesting because I didn't know much about CERN until, as I said, a few years ago. So for people that don't know, it's the largest particle collider. It's near Geneva in Switzerland. It was completed, I believe, 2008. And they basically, well, as I understand, they're smashing particles together and
Yeah, very high rates of speed.
nearly at the speed of light. And
Mm-hmm.
they do say, oh, well, I understand that it can open portals to the planes or stargates, and it can also create black holes. Now,
Mhm.
um, or they say tiny quantum black holes may be possible, they actually said. So you
They
said
say
before,
maybe possible.
yeah, may be possible. So there's no hesitation from you that there has been something happening there that's opened something and created a larger awakening for humanity.
Yeah. Well, what happened is, so if, and I'm not extremely versed on a lot of this stuff. I know a little bit about a lot of things. And so if anyone wants to further, research, investigate, you can find so much out on the internet nowadays. But basically what happened and the way it was explained to me consciously is that, every so many years, we're already kind of like pre-scheduled to have kind of like upgrading, updating, that our energetic systems that we function in are then gridded further into the conscious design and into the energetic design. And so whenever this happens, there are individual, I don't want to get too far from the scope of our original question, but the gridding that this happens in is developed by individuals by expanding their consciousness, expanding their physical being. And I am getting away from the original question. What was the original question, Karen?
I was getting a
this,
little bit lost there
this
too,
is
to
what
be
happens
honest.
when we talk about these things. We get ahead of ourselves, and
Yeah.
I start talking about something that's completely unrelated to the original question, and then I've forgotten what the original question was.
It was about opening portals to other planes or stargates, we're talking
Yes.
around that.
So we'll rewind back to that a little bit. So, a lot of individuals are starting to come in more awareness that um, you know, it's very unsettling for individuals to think that there is a very elaborate grid work out there in the great being in existence that goes beyond where we exist here in our humanness.
Mm, mm,
Because this is a human experience, and you can have many human experiences here, but you can have many different other experiences of many other different kind of life experiences out there in parallel worlds.
mm, mm,
And when you go messing around with things that aren't really supposed to be tinkered with, it's kind of like playing God, you're playing creator, which we are creators, but in the grand scheme of things, there's a baseline matrix that holds everything together.
mm,
And when you go screwing around with that, you create problems, and then you have bleed through, and then you've got people seeing and experiencing things that technically aren't supposed to happen here. And so whenever that happens or happened, it happened during a point when we were scheduled to have this annual maintenance, that happens every so many thousand years. And so instead of just having that, standard updating, then it had to be turned into a whole massive integration of different timelines and parallels that weren't supposed to be together. But it's kind of like this whole team of individuals were like, okay, so this has gotten screwed up and out of hand, and we have to fix it somehow.
mm, mm,
So instead of trying to correct each individual parallel timeline, they all went, okay, well, where's the only way to fix it? And like literally, this is what I've been told is this is the only way to fix it is to integrate all these different parallels together and create whole new timelines, a whole new existence, a whole new human experience.
wow.
And so
Yeah,
that's,
it's really fascinating. As I understand, Stan, CERN was created to basically find out how universe was created. That was the the reason for it being created, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Uh,
They
and
wanted to create tiny big bangs, which
exactly. And it's really like they talk about Higgs boson particle, the God particle. They're looking for the God particle. Um, and those particles are moving, nearly at the speed of light. So we're really playing with, as I see it, we're playing with a bit dangerous stuff here because, you know, what about if something goes wrong? And as I understand, they say, oh, nothing's going to go wrong, but they also admitted, as I said earlier, they actually are creating small black holes. And
yeah.
so, can you elaborate a little bit more about black holes for people that don't understand what's actually is a black hole?
For me, in my conscious experience, and actually from what I've been told in the work that we're doing, is that we are literally pulling our parallels out of black holes that have been created. And it created this, it's almost like just black hole is, excuse me, I'm still struggling with this. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my camera stand. Um, Whenever this happens, it takes, a massive level of energy to reverse that black hole. Can it be reversed? It's and we're trying, like we literally are trying. There are thousands of people around the world who are very conscious energy workers that have very high levels of energetic fluidity, and it requires great levels of energy to reverse that vortex effect. I'm not extremely versed on scientific
Mm,
black hole study. I know, some about it, but I feel like a lot of these things within the matrix, these are just names of what they're called when something goes wrong with the gridding. So it's basically like a glitch in the system, it's like malfunction, man down. There's a big problem and it's going to take a whole lot of individuals to fix it.
yeah, yeah,
And that's where a lot of people don't understand is that energy functions and flows fluidly through every one of us and through
mm,
this matrix that we function in,
yeah,
but black hole, uh, creating a black hole is probably, no different than, oh gosh, there was an analogy to it the other day that I'm trying to remember and I can't remember it now. But it's one of those things I need to take notes on it whenever I come across these things so that I don't forget them. Dangerous because what has happened is they have created this parallel that was very dark matrix, and that then introduced pretty horrific experiences in many people's lives that technically should not have happened.
mm, mm,
And it's kind of like having to clean up a big mess that some little kids playing with firecrackers created, and it's like
mm,
they didn't know what they were doing. So does that make it okay? They didn't know
mm.
that it was going to have such a catastrophic event attached to it. So does that make it,
Yeah,
excusable?
yeah.
To me, I kind of feel like they know what could happen.
Oh,
They have to have they have to have a mapping of everything that could go wrong.
of course.
They know what could happen.
They're playing with big stuff. When I did a little bit of research on black holes, the definition I found was that it's a place in space where gravity pulls so much that even light cannot get out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Well,
I nearly see it as it's a void. Um,
can I elaborate on that just a little bit?
absolutely.
So when you speak of gravity and the gravitational pull into a black hole, um, there's actually been, and this is something I speak on quite often, is that gravity is not because of the rotational force of the Earth, which is what has been taught all of our lives. But gravity is actually due to some fall of energetic fluctuation. When you think about a gravity, it's literally just the negative aspect of having. I'm going to sound really stupid trying to explain this because I don't know all the scientific lingo, but it's kind of like having negative force of energy present because that portion of the matrix has malfunctioned.
Yeah. Danelle, it was really breaking up at the start of that. Can you repeat that bit? Because it really broke up so we can, so the listeners can hear.
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure which part, but in relation to
Just the black hole,
actually, I think
the
yeah, I
gravity.
think it was Einstein. Einstein had spoken of the relativity of gravity, and he actually, one of his original discoveries was that it was energetic based and not rotational based of Earth, which this is something that I downloaded a while back and that I speak on frequently is that gravity is energetics related, not rotational, because the and it gets very deep because rotation of Earth is based on human programming.
I know what you're talking about.
The Earth rotates because we're programmed to know that the Earth rotates. We're programmed to know what it feels like.
Yeah.
But realistically, it's due to energetics and the rise and fall of energetics. If we're in higher elevation of energy, then we're much lighter. You know, you, you, you can tell on different days because we think of timelines. And so in higher timelines, we're much lighter, less density. And lower timelines, the energy is very heavy. So we feel very, stagnant, stout, heavy, pulled closer to the ground. And so that in relation to a black hole is because that part of the matrix is not functioning properly. It's broken. So there is no energy to hold the balanced energy, so it just vortexes and
Mm,
it just pulls.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense for me. I'm not sure how it makes sense for everyone out there, but
Well,
it is.
it'll quite honestly break the brain of some people because it's when you've been taught one thing all of your life and then it comes into light that they begin talking about how everything we've been taught all of our lives is incorrect. It's literally rewriting history. But this goes back to most recent discovery of how things happening in the future can affect the past.
Mm, mm, mm,
And so things that is happening in the future, conscious development is now correcting the past
mm.
because we're actually operating in both at the same time
Yeah.
now.
And that's the very interesting thing I was going to actually go into. This is where I'm feeling like energetically, it's like jumping timelines and being in different spaces and yeah, it's a very interesting phenomena right now. Um, and some people probably feeling it. They're feeling that they're living partly in the old, call it whatever we call it, the three
Yeah.
or the old matrix. We're seeing it now and we're living it partly, but then we're living in another kind of dimension as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that is something that is linked to the CERN and that atlas?
Yeah. Um, Atlas, yes, but its own aspect. CERN, yes, definitely, because what is happening between the oscillation of the past, the future, and the present is that it's kind of like tying a shoelace. And so, because we are having to literally quantum jump through very large spaces of time in order to collapse all of the old fractured timelines, we're building and have built, the future timeline placement. Those who are responsible for conscious integration have already gone, which was like 2000 years into future consciousness, grounded there, and then have started this ping back and forth. I always refer to it as 0 point.
Mm.
And then it creates an oscillation. So you're constantly moving very far forward and very far back because you're building this future while collapsing all of the old timelines in a very accelerated state.
Mm.
And this is normal conscious and interdimensional activity, but it's so exacerbated because it's so accelerated and it's collapsing a very huge amount of time
Yeah.
and very, very many um, timelines, very many timelines. So, individuals who are considered mentally ill, they're actually experiencing a mass acceleration in consciousness, and experiencing their consciousness in multiple states of existence
Mm.
while this is taking place, because there's certain life events that have to occur. There's certain pivotal moments throughout life that have to be pinged. You may be able to fast forward through all of the mundane, the not as elaborate parts of life, but there's very specific pinpoints that have to happen. And so it's kind of like moving forward, you're fast forwarding, you're jumping back, you're hitting these specific points, and then you're moving forward and you're jumping back, and you're still collapsing out the old while you're creating the new.
Mm.
I actually just had an article pop up that I was commenting on earlier today. I think I shared it on my Facebook profile, but it actually describes just that, and my example is that this is where memories come from. When you have memories pop up,
Mm.
whenever you have PTSD that pops up, because you're functioning in all of these different time placements, and every time that timeline oscillates back through to have that energy collapsed out, you experience memories, you experience PTSD, and that's how integration happens with consciousness, and that's how old timelines are collapsed and moved out.
Mm. It's
So I
so
hope
very
it's a
interesting.
very extensive answer, but
Yeah. It's so very interesting. This morning, actually, early in the morning, I was came across some information. There was a YouTube video about how to basically create a new reality or do a timeline jump, how you do that. And it was really fascinating. I mean, it's all energy, and it was what I got out of it is
Mhm,
um, basically setting it up so through breath work, a lot through breath work. There can be through deep
mhm,
meditation too, and getting into a kind of a void
mhm,
where there's no attachment to the past or attachment to the future. And
mhm.
yeah, it was really fascinating to, um,
Yeah.
yeah, but the big one I got out of it was really the importance of just let go if we're going to jump into a new reality or create or manifest something new. We have to be able to let go.
Mhm.
That's where I kind of feel we are now in the world we're living in now. It's just the constant
Yeah.
letting go. I think we tapped into it just before we started this podcast,
Mm.
and
Yeah. We did. Literally, as I was joining onto the Zoom, we were flowing through baseline and we were just getting ready to shift into a higher timeline.
Mm.
Um, it's very interesting, and it's interesting to experience too, especially if you're a very rapid oscillating conscious person, because it happens so fast, that you move from one shift. It just,
That
that's one thing. Go very fast.
that was a very big delay there. It's a big delay, but you're saying, uh, for some people, we're oscillating very, very fast. We're processing very fast. We're upgrading very fast. When you're saying that, that's
Yeah.
exactly how I feel. I'm processing things extremely, extremely fast. And
Hmm.
yeah, the experience of time at the moment is very, very odd construct for myself because
Hmm.
a day ago when something happens, I can talk to a person and I feel that that was like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And
Well, there's reason for that.
you tell us what the reason is. Explain that, Danelle.
Well, because literally currently right now and for the last several years, I mean, for me, it has been nonstop for almost 7 years. Um, because I have ridden the wave and the integration with every wave. And now we've gone from having 3 waves to now having 5 waves. And we have a whole nother set of volunteers that have come in to help. So it's been a while. But the reason for that is because you are collapsing time literally 12 hours every 30 minutes in this process. So those moments when you're feeling fuzzy, those moments when you're feeling heavily sleepy, and even in your sleep, whenever you are moving through this process right now, you're literally going through 12 sleep cycles. It's like, and that's also what's causing the insomnia, the inability to stay asleep. The sleep cycles are happening very rapidly. But yeah, so when you wake up, you literally can wake up and like 2 or 3 weeks could have gone by in certain timelines, while that time is being collapsed out in your sleep.
Mm, well, that explains very much how I feel and how I operate. And I was talking to a friend of mine that's similar the other day, and it is nice when you can talk to people that understand how that is, because
Very
it's
much.
not always so easy. And unless someone's experiencing it, they can't
Yeah.
they can't understand
No.
what we're on about.
Mhm.
But it's
And
all,
that's,
and
sorry.
I was going to say it can be also a very lonely experience because
Yeah.
there's so many people and experiences we have that come into our lives very quickly, but they disappear as quickly as they came in as well.
A lot of that is related to the timeline collapsing, especially for those who are frontliners or grid holders who have moved into the future consciously, because then you're collapsing future timelines, like literally, that exist in a blink.
Mm, mm,
And so you're meeting individuals that would have been present in your life in those timelines, but you're meeting them and you're experiencing time with them in a very, that's why there's so many relationship issues right now, and so many just individuals that are going through so much trouble in their lives, like it's
mm,
uh, the term karmic, karmic energy. Is a pretty common term. And I'm sorry, my cat has the whole room to run in, and he keeps jumping on the base of my photography stand. So I'm like, go on, kitties. You're being rude. The whole room to run in, and they have to come and get in the middle of my feet.
That
But
is
yeah,
interesting to know because I see it all around me. There's a lot of talk about relationships at the moment, divine, sacred unions, the masculine, the feminine. We're moving more into the feminine is rising, as we know. But
yeah,
from a human experience for myself and for many other people, it's very hard to actually um, be in any long-term relationship because everything is moving and expanding so fast. And unless you are in a similar, um, similar kind of awareness,
hmm,
I feel that it's very hard that it's gonna work unless there's
compromise and understanding.
that
Yeah.
understanding of that.
Hmm. Or separation, that's
Yeah, that's a topic. Yeah, that's another whole topic maybe. But I see that emerging a
yeah,
lot.
it's a very difficult time for a lot of people in the relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean,
So let's see. So we talked a little bit. I'm sorry. Now I had a delay on your end.
yeah, no, you go for it, Danelle.
No. So we talked a little bit about Atlas last time that we spoke. Um, the whole, we could probably sit and have a conversation for at least an hour just on that itself.
Mm,
It's a very misunderstood, misconstrued, fear-mongering, diversion creating, like that people want to create all these scenarios of, what it is and what it isn't. That it's just a diversion or that it's a created effect, and this is one of those things that I've channeled for a while.
mm,
um I've been directly contacted. I have photographs of my own of celestial families that have come just close enough for us to be able to photograph in smaller capacity. Now this is a very large capacity. I personally have been told that it is nothing to be fearful of, and that it has been sent to help us from our celestial counterparts, because many of us are integrated from our celestial realities, that we have existed in, or that we would have existed in the future, and all of these past, present, and future timelines, for us to come in contact, with other beings. Humans are very naive, and very self-centered to think that they're the only thing that exists in the world, and all of the worlds, all of the capacity of the universe. And I guess that's easy to do because, we live in our little planet, in our little lives, and are very sheltered in that aspect and have been, but the future is now. And, energy workers have been asking for help for months, because redoing the structuring of these timelines and the energy that it takes to do it uh, is at a grand capacity that is it's exhausting. Like it literally is exhausting. And so we asked for help and help we got.
yeah. It's really interesting that, and we can elaborate that for a long time. But what I found really interesting, it's called the CI Atlas. Okay.
Hmm.
But then we're talking about CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, that has got a part in it called Atlas. So I'm like, why is it called CI Atlas? Is it because it's linked to the Hadron Collider somehow? Do you know what I mean? Because
Maybe.
I'm going,
Yeah.
what? Why is that? There must
Yeah.
be a,
I've come across a couple of things like that as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows if something actually, well, you did channel that
Mhm.
actually something happened at CERN. And I can recall those. Can you remember what year they said that they were worried or said something had happened there? Can you remember what year that
There
was?
were actually a couple of years, but it initially began, I believe, around whenever everyone was shouting Y2K, you know. Do you remember that whole era, the Y2K era, that everybody was on the edge of their seats? You
Mm.
know, computers were going to fail and all digital, you know, components were going to fail. We weren't going to have telephones or electricity and you know, like it was this huge thing and everybody just waited just to see if something was actually going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I was younger, but I wasn't like, you
Yeah.
know, I wasn't a teenager or anything like that. So I remember, you know, when it all was going down, but, you know, around that time, you know, and, you know, there's individuals that all across the board, you know, they all agree that between 2012 and 2019 is when everything really started to go nuts in our world.
Mm. Yeah, it is. It is very interesting, and maybe we need to ponder about why they called it CI Atlas.
Hmm.
Is it a clear link to the CERN hydrogen collider and the Atlas part of that collider? Is that hence um, why they call it that? Is it a pure link? So we're definitely living in very, very interesting times, and humanity are starting to ask the deeper questions. I think, why are we here? What's the purpose? All those deeper, deeper questions are being asked now as the consciousness is
Yeah.
rising. And as I see it, Danelle, to kind of function as human beings in this intense energetic awakening, I'm finding myself having to also ground myself to be able to sort of function daily as a human being because we are human beings. Oh, well, a spiritual being in a human experience. Uh, and uh, it's a fascinating time we're living in now, uh,
Hmm.
isn't it? And, you know, we can go off in that real spiritual, deep, high consciousness and kind of be lost there in some ways. But
Yeah.
we need to also be grounded, don't we? We need to be really grounded as well.
It's hard to be. And realistically, like through much of the process, as being one of the original frontliners, I was not grounded for several years. My consciousness was moving um, at such a high clip that there was no grounding. And that was like when I would ask, you know, like, what do I need to do in order to successfully move through these processes? And one of them was be ungrounded. You know, but to have some peace of mind, you know, and to have some sense of stability, you do have to be able to ground to be able to just,
Mm,
you know, we're all conscious channelers
mm,
because that's how we obtain a lot of our learning. But what people don't realize is that you literally have access to any kind of information out there in the world when you are open consciously.
Yeah.
My kids used to joke whenever they were little that I was a human encyclopedia. I could give them a definition of any word that existed. I could give them just so much. I could give them an answer for just about anything.
Yeah.
And it was always just kind of a running joke that Danelle just knew, Well, how does Danelle know? I don't know. I just know, you know?
Mm,
And that's kind of how it is with this first channeling of CERN.
mm,
I was not a scientific person. I was just a basic everyday, I was a creative. I was a very creative, intelligent person, but there were a lot of things that I didn't know in the world.
mm, mm,
And to suddenly just know and have this information
mm,
and then having to go research to back up the information that you're given,
mm,
it can be confusing for an individual to first experience that. And so we have a lot of individuals
mm.
who are experiencing that conscious opening that is giving them an unlimited amount of information and learning. It's kind of like when
Oh,
you go to do baking and you do something without a recipe.
absolutely.
You you just know how to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is where we're moving into now. We're moving into the heart, the intuition, the full trust and let go of
Mhm.
the control of the construct of what it has to be and fully operating from that space. It takes a lot of just what comes to me is just free falling. The word free falling. Could we just trust to just free fall, listening to our hearts? How would
Yeah.
world be if we operate from that place? It would be very, very different, wouldn't it? And that's
Yeah.
what we kind of ushered in to do now. I was talking to a friend of mine that he said he's a very deep person. We could have deep conversations. He's done a lot of meditation, but my intuition says straight away, this person is very much in his brain. He is not willing to totally let go and do a free fall into the heart.
Mhm.
There were a lot of protection, a lot of analytical things had to be there to explain the depth, which to me was very easy to see. You don't have to. You don't have to explain it. You just have to trust. You just have to be.
A
And
very grounded person.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, we can elaborate forever and ever around this,
Yeah.
Danelle. And it has been,
There's so, there's so many different avenues and,
yeah,
you know, connections that it can turn into.
yeah. We've had a lot of interference with the internet today. So I will still
Mhm.
post this podcast, but we might have to elaborate a little bit more another time into this big topic. I hope that we have woken some people up to maybe doing a little bit more of their own research into this topic and also not doing
Mhm.
research, also connecting in with the heart, what sits with them. Um, and
Yeah, because every individual is on a different wavelength and their own individual process, and some maybe, individuals like us, and I don't like to utilize the them or us or, because we're all just on this big wild journey, but individuals who have done all of this conscious work really carry so much information, and I don't expect individuals who haven't been on the same journey as me to have the same expansive knowledge, you
mm,
know, but they will eventually
yeah,
if
absolutely.
they're open to it. If they're open to it, yeah.
And that's probably how we can finish off. And I always say, if we're open, just open and have a sense of complete curiosity like a little child and
Absolutely.
live each moment in that space of just, I'm going to be curious. Not worry about what's going to be, just be really curious right in this present moment. And then on the
Yeah.
same time, develop those
Hmm.
practices we can have to stay really grounded. So I thank you so much for this conversation today.
Yeah,
Definitely
absolutely.
so quick, and we definitely have to elaborate, but would love to hear the listeners, anyone tuning in, your thoughts about this. And of course, all the information to you, Danelle, will be in the description for the podcast. And any listeners can definitely contact both of us for more expansion and for more learning if they so wish. So thank you very much from my bottom of my
Yeah.
day.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. And thanks for everyone for joining us. And you can find us on all of the lovely social medias.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.